What's going on, Browns fans? Welcome back to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Harold, and with me, as always, my co-host, Jeff Santa. Today, we're gonna be talking some speculation here because we're in year 4 of the Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry regime, and there's no Super Bowl win yet. And not that there should be, but there definitely should be talks about their future here and how they've done as of yet. Jeff, that all being said, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I think that this is a little bit of a conversation sparked from something you shared with me on Twitter earlier today, which is interesting, discussing draft picks, Andrew Berry, draft picks, trades, how Kevin Stefanski's implemented them. I think that this is a discussion that I don't know, maybe we talk about them kind of singularly, but too much, and maybe we need to kind of figure out how they're more interconnected. I know that some people online do talk about them, as a good tandem, but I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to, when obviously teams go through changes, quarterback changes, head coaching changes, coordinator changes, GM changes. The thing with, these two in particular is they were brought in at the same time. They have history. They worked together before. There's a lot that's connected to them. Yet one makes a decision on who's coming in to play for the team, and the other makes a decision on if they're playing or not. So we're going to take a look. We're going to look back at individual stuff like Andrew Berry's draft history, his trade history, and Kevin Stefanski, obviously, throughout the seasons, how he's done. Have we seen significant changes throughout 3 seasons? That being said, Jeff, would you like to get started on this one?
Honestly, like just this tweet that you sent me with this screenshot is because we had plenty of selections in the 2022 draft. In general, Winfrey's gone. I think Cade York is, on the hot seat, which we talked about in a recent upload. Martin Emerson is good. I think that these guys have their strengths that we could just kind of define. Like Andrew Berry is very good with drafting cornerbacks. Like he really has been. Between Emerson and Greg Newsome, those are pretty solid. Yeah, I get that they were, high draft picks, whatever. Those could be layups, but not always. And then I just think it's interesting how these guys from the 2022 class, how many of these guys are going to make an early impact early on this season. And I know that that's kind of a long time in football terms. You could do a roster overhaul, in 12 months, 6 months, 8 months, but Emerson's going to play. Alex Wright is hurt for however long. We're not even sure. David Bell's not going to play. Winfrey's gone. Cade York is basically, he has to play. Jerome Ford hurt, but, likely to make some sort of an impact. Michael Woods is his season is over. Correct. And then Isaiah Thomas is hurt. And then Dawson Deaton, probably not playing too many snaps. So yeah, I mean, I think that draft class is still early, but it looks like, a decent amount of misses there from Berry, but I think that he's kind of made that up as far as acquisitions through the trade market since 2022.
You also have to just kind of take it at face value. Like, again, there are 200 some picks in an NFL draft.
Sure.
Not every player is going to be a success from that draft. And I don't think it's fair to assume that even half of the guys that you draft, depending on how many, of course, are going to be successful. So let's just go back all the way to his first draft until now, and we'll do it really quick. Like, I'll list them off.
Okay.
First round or first pick of 2020. This is when the regime between the two of them started. Jedrick Wills, obvious pick. You needed a left tackle at the time. Grant Delpit, kind of shaky, injured the first whole year, has been injured in the past.
And Wills, you don't pick up his option, so
yeah, you're not going to pick up his option. You have replacements for him, which we'll probably talk about later. Delpit, he's a question mark. I mean, I can't mark him as a miss, but I can't mark him as a hit.
He's trending in the right direction, though.
Yeah, he's a starter, and he's trending in the right direction. Jordan Elliott, he's probably gone after this year. Jacob Phillips, injury prone, gone after this year. Harrison Bryant was someone who I had high expectations for after his first season. Really kind of fizzled out at this point. I think he's the tight end number 3.
He's not making much impact this year.
Yeah. Nick Harris, who you thought was going to be your starting center last year, gets hurt and is now your backup center. There's that situation for you. Who knows if he'll ever develop anything. That's an L. Donovan Peoples-Jones. So your best pick came technically, Jed Wills is your best pick because he's played and started the most games, but I would say that DPJ is probably the best pick out of that draft.
For your value, he's
For your
definitely the
value,
best pick.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'd say, out of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out of 8 picks, he got 3 of those right, which I think it's not 50%, but it's pretty close. It's
Right.
pretty close. So then we move on to the next year. Greg Newsome, Jeremiah, Anthony Schwartz, James Hudson, Tommy Togiai, Tony Fields, Richard LeCount, Demetric Felton. Greg Newsome, success.
Sure.
Jeremiah Osu, I'd say he's a success right now. He's injury prone. I don't like that. Anthony Schwartz, goner. See you later. Out of here. Find a new home. I don't know if that whole NBA meme of people going to China to play basketball is a thing, but maybe you want to play rugby. James Hudson, that's going to be your replacement for Wills probably in a year. Tommy Togiai, he's a goner. Tony Fields is actually someone I've been keeping an eye on. He wasn't my pick for who's been doing really well in the preseason, but he had a prototypical, like, your secondary backup linebacker in the preseason. Of course, you're going to go out there and play your balls off and get stats out the wazoo. He played well. I think he's going to have more of a role because of Jacob Phillips being hurt.
Sure.
Richard LeCount, goner. Demetric Felton, dude can't punch it in from the 1-yard line, and I don't know that he can catch the ball any better than Schwartz. So
we're so excited about him too, and he's not. He's like
Jeff. I mean, let's be honest. He helped that team out.
That's my issue, though. Is he the third running back on this team, or like what is? I don't even know.
Is he the third running back, or is he the 5th wide receiver?
That's your issue with being like this hybrid in college. Like, you have no defined role, and you're practicing with 2 different. I mean, I don't feel like bad for him, but I just he kind of was doomed from the start. But that's fine.
Then we move on to the next year that you already talked about, and again, the first pick, Emerson, I think, like you said, he's got the cornerbacks pretty much down pat. Wright, Hurt, Bell, no. Now, for all the good he's done with the cornerbacks, he's been god awful with the wide receivers in draft, at least in the draft. I mean,
really,
DPJ is good. That's a good one. Whatever you count Felton as, meh. Schwartz is bad. And then you get into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, essentially 5 wide receivers who either will not see the field or have not seen the field. So in terms of drafting them, not great. Trading for them, he's fucking phenomenal. I mean, you fleece the Dallas Cowgirls. And then you go and you get I think you might have got the best wide receiver outside of Garrett Wilson from the Jets. I don't know what was happening there with Elijah Moore, but he's been phenomenal. I got to go back. People have got to roast me for all the things that I said about that trade, because I flipped the switch. I think he's great. I think he might be the wide receiver 1 here. But that being said, Barry, in terms of drafting, I'm not a huge fan. There's a lot here in the 4 years that you could be like, take it or leave it. I'm leaving a good majority of this. But when you look at the Greg Newsomes, the JOKs, the Martin Emersons are the big ones where you're hitting on guys in the later rounds. That's your big key. Jeff, you and I were covering guys like JOK and Greg Newsome in the first round of that draft. When you get guys like Emerson, when you get guys like DPJ, when you got guys like Tillman, for me, and Dewande, there's a lot of guys here who have potential. We just need to see it. And that's the problem. Barry doesn't have a lot of guys on the field in terms of draftees. However, his trade target's great. Jeff, how has Stefanski done with implementing these guys?
Honestly, I just think that that whole what you just laid out kind of tracks, because it's like we have gotten so sick of we haven't gotten sick of Nick Chubb, obviously, but we've gotten so sick of okay, are we going to just commit to running the ball, or are we not going to run the ball at all? And then you, like you said, you really don't have a whole lot of great wide receiver talent outside of Amari Cooper. Like last year, the Cleveland Browns have really not had a whole lot of wide receiver talent since 1999. Like, sure, you have a couple seasons of Josh Gordon, you have a couple seasons of Jarvis Landry,
Yeah.
OBJ a little bit, whatever, but no one who's been consistent. Like, yeah, this guy's going for like 1,000 yards in a Browns
Right.
uniform. So with that being said, you kind of see how Stefanski's game plan has kind of been like, oh, we're just going to make sure every offensive lineman we have is good. We're going to use 3 tight ends and, piss the whole fan base off, basically. Like,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's
Play the opposite of normal today football.
but there really should never be any world this season where like Harrison Bryant is making a huge impact. If Njoku and Akins are healthy, like he just doesn't have a role on this team. Like you have to kind of move away from people who had a role in the Stefanski with, the Baker offense and some of those teams with the bad wide receivers versus this year where, you have a competent one and you have a potential to have a really good 2 if you just want to put Elijah Moore as the really good 2, and DPJ is a really solid 3 at the end of the day. Probably could play a 2 role, but like you have an elite route runner and Amari Cooper, you're going to have Nick Chubb. You hope Jerome Ford is a competent running back catching the ball out of the backfield, and you have Njoku who you kind of bet big money on him. So you should be putting up big points this year. It's not always going to happen in the AFC North. There's going to be weather, but I mean, you need an average points per game of a lot better than what we've been putting out the last 2 seasons for sure.
Jeff, this is why I love that I made the decision to make you the co-host. I mean, you just you made up a huge point that I don't even know that you even recognize, but Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, for 2 years, tailored a team towards a quarterback, which is something that, you typically have to do if you want success in the NFL or if you're trying to build success. And it's fair now to even go back and look at some of these picks and be like, hey, these were picks that were made specifically for Baker, or in the aspect of, hey, we need this to help Baker and get it done. Great point, Jeff, because when you move on to those next 2 years of drafts, you could really boil it down to, hey, when they look at the roster and what it was built to that point and what they had in waiting with Deshaun, I think there's a lot of conversation to be had there in terms of like, hey, where is this gear switch and how does it switch and what does it mean for this offense moving forward? Because like you said, a lot of it has to do with building the team around the quarterback.
And really that's Stefanski's essentially last excuse. Not that he's been the excuse giver this whole time. I don't know if he's great at, taking accountability and, kind of running his team from top down, but it's like with Watson suspended last year, you weren't going to the Watson offense with Brissett at the helm. And I think the offense played good at times with Brissett, but you're not going to switch to the Deshaun Watson playbook when you have Brissett at the helm for the majority of your games where you need to win to make the playoffs. So this is your first full season with him. We know what you're going to get from Nick Chubb. You know what you're going to get from the offensive line for the most part. Everybody else has to go out, execute the playbook, and it has to be kind of a high-flying offense in the AFC North.
It really does. Jeff, I've got to ask you, the AFC is stacked this year. We know this. We're not going to get into predictions quite yet, but I want your end of the season guess. Are Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski still here next year?
I can't say definitively either. Andrew Berry's for sure here next year.
Interesting.
If Stefanski makes it through Stefanski will be fired through the first 4 games, or he will get another year. Unless something crazy happens like the last 1 or 2 games that is totally his fault and knocks us out of playoff contention. If we could be at 2-2 through the first 4 games or better, he's going to keep his job. If we're 1-3, he might be getting canned. If we're 0-4, he's definitely gone, and Schwartz will be out of the bye week. Whatever it is out of the bye week, if we only have 1 win, Schwartz will be the head coach, 100%.
I just thought you said Schwartz, and my first instinct was Anthony. I was like, what?
No, Jim.
What? Two completely different Jims, or 2 completely different Schwartzes. One's talking about smoking cigarette packs here in Cleveland. One's dropping balls. So both funny guys, though, honestly. But Jeff, I'm I'm honestly at a loss for words because that point up until now about and I love not having to bring up Baker because it's taken so much stress off of my agenda recently. But in 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 closing, it's just a matter of Kevin putting it all together in this season because I'm of the opinion this is his last chance. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I think he's gone. It does not matter how good the win-loss record was.
Okay.
You have to make the playoffs this year or you're gone. Andrew, like Jeff said, I think he has a case to be here after Stefanski, but that's that. That being said, make sure you guys are liking, make sure you guys are subscribing, hitting the bell notification, letting us know in the comments what you guys think. What have Kevin and Andrew Berry done that you guys have loved? What have you guys hated? What do you guys think is going to be the outcome of this regime? Are we going to win a Super Bowl? Is it going to end in fire? Who knows? Jeff and I are going to be here for it. We're going to be making videos for it. That means you all have to come back next week when we have more stuff out for you. And that being said, Jeff, catch you all next week. Peace.